Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming on this very cold night. I was kind of afraid that, oh my God, it's like -12 and we haven't had that temperature for a while. I think it's the first time it's kind of dipping. So I thought, I don't know if we'll show up, but I knew people will be online. So that was good. So, and thank you so much for coming. And thank you for the people online. I hope that you guys can hear me. If you can't, or if something freezes, just, unmute yourself and let me know. But we've tried to do a different setup where you can actually see me as well as, I guess you can see me over there too. And the presentation. So hopefully it works online as well. So let's get started on the topic for today is making sense of supplements. So now that wasn't the original plan. When we were planning these things, I was actually at a different topic. It was more about inflammation. We were going to talk about in January, but December got a little hectic for me. A lot of things happened and I got really busy and I thought, well, I need to come up with a topic that, that won't take me so much time. And I realized that supplements is something I'm always talking about. Every time we have a customer coming in or a client with a medication review, there's always an issue. Either they're confused or they're taking too much or they need to take some, but they're very hesitant. And I thought, this is something that, I know quite a bit about and I'm always researching. And I thought, well, this is something hopefully I can put together. Little did I know that supplements is such a huge topic. How am I going to make it such that I'm not talking about every supplement out there, which obviously is impossible for me because there's too many and I don't know all of them. And so that was not going to happen. So I thought, well, how am I going to make it such that, it's useful to you and it kind of gives you some guidelines on to think about when you are considering supplements or should you be considering supplements, right? So that's basically what my goal is today, that you guys have some sort of an idea what supplements are about, what different types of them are out there, and what kind of questions should you be asking yourself. And again, hopefully we'll have time at the end to, if you have any specific questions, because I knew people would have specific questions, then you can bring that up and we can talk about specific supplements at that point. But otherwise, it's more of a general talk, okay? So let's get started. I hope I'm recording. Can somebody online tell me if it said recording? I tend to forget and I had an automatic recording, but. Can you tell?
Image. Or maybe backwards on the line.
Oh, no, it's showing up proper, I think, but can you tell anywhere it's recording? What's that?
Go to more and see if.
More. Oh, it's recording because it says pause recording, stop recording. Yeah, I think we're recording. I had done something with the setting to make sure that it's recording automatically because I always forget. Okay, so let's go to. Uh-oh. Wait, it's working. So when I sent my tech support away, I can't go to my next slide. Oops, there we did that. Okay. Sorry about that. Let's yeah. Okay, I think we're back. Okay, perfect. So the $1 million question there is. Sorry, let me just pull this up so people can see me. Okay. $1 million question. Do supplements work or are they a waste of money? Any comments on that? What do you guys think?
I don't know. I was skeptical, so I want to know more.
Okay, good. Anybody else?
Think in terms of like, for example, when I'm low iron, so I actually need to get
Yeah.
supplements, whereas and other vitamins that I might want because I'm feeling tired, like for the B12 or something. I might want to take those, but I don't have it.
but you don't know if it's gonna work or if you need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you had, sorry, did you have a?
No, I think it all depends on your body, and what your body needs.
Yeah.
So number one, and number two, but also I'm sure there's a difference in quality needs and what's.
Yeah. For some things, definitely. For others, not so. But yeah,
Correct.
but you have a good point. And we'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the quality and manufacture and all that. So had you asked me that, sorry, go ahead.
And also the amount.
Yes, the dosage matters. Absolutely. It definitely matters. Had you asked me this question 30 years ago when I graduated from pharmacy school, I would have said they're a waste of money. And the reason is that you are not trained in that at all. And now in hindsight, I look back and I really had one course, which was for like, I think 1 or 2 hours. That's all they had at the time, talking about supplements or any of the nutrients, so I came out without any training. And that's true for medical doctors and a lot of people in the conventional medical field is we are not trained on this, right? So you come out thinking, well, they're a waste of money because we weren't really trained on this. But, and then 10 years ago, I did a certification in holistic nutrition. That's when I learned a lot about nutrients. And I was actually quite angry that nobody told me this, right? They should have told me, and not just from supplements, but obviously the first base is always your diet. That's where, and your lifestyle. That's where you fill yourself up. And then, if something is missing, that's when you turn to supplements. Of course, 4 years ago, when I actually got sick with an autoimmune condition, that's when I went from taking 0 supplements, which I should have been taking some supplements, but I'll talk a little bit about after that, to like, at one point I was taking 6 supplements at the same time. But again, that was a time protocol that I followed, but I went from 0 to taking a lot more. So it was really interesting in terms of my own journey. And then I've come to realization that really the answer is between the two. They're not a waste of money. There's some supplements that are very effective, even for some of the symptoms, right? So, and there's a lot of research behind it as well, which is something that I was kind of upset that nobody actually told me in pharmacy school, the amount of research that's there. So a lot of times I go in and look up the research. So yes, supplements do work, but again, you can't be in a position where you want to just take anything because you saw an ad for it, or your friends taking it again, because like you said, everybody's different, right? What you need is different than what somebody else needs. What you may be less of, for example, in your case, iron, may not be the case for someone else, right? So we'll talk a bit more about that. This is going to give me a hard time. Okay, there you go. So I wanted to just give you a definition of supplements. So they're known as natural health products. Basically, like I said before, they're supplements. They're not supposed to be taken instead of. They're really supplementing something else, supplementing a well-balanced diet, supplementing a good lifestyle, right? And if you're taking medication, they're not supposed to replace the medication. It really should be. So I would never say, stop the medication, take this. They're really supposed to supplement. Oftentimes, as you get better, you can wean off the medication. And that's basically what I had done in my own healing, right? But it's not something that you take instead of, it's always on top of, it's a supplement, right? And again, we talked about, how there's different manufacturers and it comes in many different forms. And I think that adds sometimes a lot of confusion. Even if you guys have been to like Nature's Emporium or Healthy Planet, Nature's Emporium is much bigger. And I know when I did nutrition, I would go there, and even with my understanding of supplements, I would get overwhelmed because there's so many different types, right? And so that's one of the intentional things that I've done at pharmacy is to bring in stuff that I know, I've looked at the studies and I know it works, so I can actually, so again, that's not to say the ones they have isn't working, but it's just sometimes it's overwhelming. So you kind of have to have some guidelines, and hopefully you'll walk away with some sort of guidelines in terms of how do you decide. So, there you go. Are they regulated? So before 2004, they weren't regulated. And that's probably the reason why we didn't really learn anything in pharmacy school, because I graduated in 98. And like I said, only 2 hours is all I got. So they weren't regulated, they were under food. So again, at that point, anybody could really sell anything. There was no regulation. It was kind of like the Wild West, you could get anything. And so once the regulation came into effect, I think that kind of at least guarantees the safety, effectiveness, and quality of the product. So anything that's a natural health product should contain an NPN number, right? If it's a homeopathic number, it should have a DIN HM number, right? And all of these are regulated by Health Canada. So these companies and manufacturers have to submit a report Now, I don't know how stringent they are in terms of regularly inspecting the facilities, but you do have to have good manufacturing practices, have to submit all those in order for Health Canada to approve the license of the products.
So if it was like a HB board and it would have that.
Yeah, that's, but if you have an NPN number, at least, and I know from a pharmacy perspective, you know, our college doesn't allow us to carry anything that doesn't have an NPN number, because again, that at least guarantees that it's safe, effective, and because anybody can really make a product and put it on the shelf. But it has an NPN number, you know that it's been it's regulated, it's been inspected by Health Canada. And what's more is that you can put, and I was thinking that maybe what if somebody put an NPN number, because you can just print a label and do it, right? But there isn't actually a database of all the licensed natural health products that Health Canada maintains. So you can actually Google it and go in, and I went in and you can put in the NPN number to see if it's been licensed, right? Again, if you go to like, credible companies aren't gonna just create, because there's a whole lot online for that, right? So they're not gonna do that. But if you were to be somewhere, and again, if you go to the States, because I had a client one time, and States, a lot of things are cheaper. So she had a whole lot of stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of it expired too. When I went to do a medication review for her, a lot of it expired because they didn't have NPN, and they didn't have any, because in the States it's different. I think it's still under, unless anything has changed recently, it's still under the food regulation. So they're treated as food. So the regulations are not as stringent. That's the US, but in Canada, I think this is a good step in the right direction.
I mean, there's research on them done if they have an NPN number.
Not necessarily. So when they submit the paper, some of the products are more like traditional medicine, like Chinese medicine, for example. So that's based on that, but not necessarily research in terms of what you would find on drugs, right? Because yeah, so there are products where research done, but it's not, but when Health Canada licenses them, they're not necessarily looking at that, but they are looking at safety data and effectiveness as well, but not as stringent as I would say for the drugs. But just because it has an NPN numbers, I would still go one step further to see what kind of research there is. And I'll give you some example to sort of, assess that. Okay. So I kind of divided up into like 6 classes. Not because they're kind of like set in stone. This is just something I kind of divide up so then people can understand the different types out there. So class number 1 is vitamins and minerals. Now, vitamins and minerals are something that our body needs. Our body needs it on a regular basis because a lot of the functions in our body, like metabolic functions, everything, because every cell is doing a gazillion things at any one minute, right? And our body needs the vitamins and minerals. Of course, the main source of vitamins and minerals is our diet. Right? So that's usually the first place to go to for these things. If there are deficiencies, like for example, in the case of iron, then you can go and take supplements for that. And we'll talk more about the different examples for that. But the vitamins and minerals the body does need, and you need to get a minimum amount, right? If there is deficiency, that's when you turn to minerals, but to supplements. But first source is always your food. Number 2 is botanicals or herbals. Now, these are also qualified as supplements, but they're not needed by the body. The body does not need these things to do its function. These are there. For example, we get clients often that they want a more of a natural approach. They don't want to go to medications yet, or whatever their reasons are, right? So this is where a lot of the herbal products come in, which are plant sourced. A lot of them come from like sort of old traditional medicines, like Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic. So that's what for example, turmeric, right? Or curcumin, which is like the product of curcumin, of turmeric is curcumin. And so that is called an herbal. Ashwagandha, another more of an Ayurvedic medicine, like a old traditional Indian medicine, but it's been studied now to help with adrenals and stress and all that, right? So those are botanicals. You don't need them on a regular basis. So if you didn't take them, your body's not going to stop functioning. This is more for a treatment. And we'll talk more about when we go to the question. Number 3 is homeopathic remedies. Now, I wasn't sure if I should include that, but I know it's homeopathic remedies it's a different paradigm. It's really a paradigm shift. Now, I don't know if any of you have used homeopathic remedies. Has anybody aware of? Okay. So they work very differently than the other supplements like vitamins and herbals do. because the actual pill that you take doesn't actually have an active ingredient inside it. They're based on more energy medicine. Again, like I said, it's a paradigm shift. It requires a different way of thinking. So you'll often find that doctors are completely like against it. You sometimes even have a documentary saying, well, there's no active ingredient because the medical system or the conventional medical system is really based on an active ingredient working on a receptor and doing its job. This is different. It's an energy medicine. I'm not the type who limits myself to a box. And I've learned that from my own healing that do not limit yourself to a box. So I wouldn't say it doesn't work. In fact, I've used it once in my life when I was the biggest skeptic of all this, right? Actually, when I was pregnant with my second child. And my midwife told me that, use the homeopathic. I was like, I don't know, but whatever she was telling me. So I used it and complete skeptic, but it worked. So I've used it. Again, I don't know the research behind it. It's used quite often in Europe, but in North America, there's a lot of controversy around homeopathic medicine. But if you do, you will see supplements. And again, if it's homeopathic supplement, you will see the numbers different. Remember I said it was DNHM on the earlier, but it won't have an NPN number. It will be a different number. Okay, so just so that you know that they are different than some of the other supplements. Sometimes you hear a documentary about homeopathic remedies that's very different. And that's why there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of skepticism around it, but don't limit yourself to a box. I'll listen to everybody. Probiotics, a group of its own. I think we could probably spend an entire hour on probiotics, which I don't want to do, but I just want to say probiotics, you would find them often in the fridge, but now a lot of companies are making them shelf stable. So they're manufacturing in such a way that you can, because again, it's easier for people to take. Probiotics are live bacteria, right? And I kind of think, well, why are we swallowing live bacteria? So, in the past, I would say maybe more than 10 years ago, we always thought bacteria were bad, but over the last decade, a lot of research has exploded about how we have more bacteria living inside and on top of us than actual human cells. So we're more bacteria than humans, if you want to look at it that way. So these bacteria are actually good bacteria. They do a lot of stuff and a lot of things. A lot of research is not showing that a lot of inflammation and a whole bunch of other things really starts when there is an imbalance in the bacteria. The probiotic industry has exploded. However, I would not say that just because you have an illness or you have gut imbalance, go take probiotics. There's a process of, rebalancing your gut. And I know that because I went through the whole process when I did my own sort of healing from the autoimmune condition. There's this protocols. You actually have to get rid of the bad bacteria. Then you have to fix the lining of the gut, and then you introduce the probiotics, right? So oftentimes people will be like, if there's a gut issue, should I just take probiotics? I would say, you have to look deeper into it. The only time probiotics is a good idea is if you are taking antibiotics, if you've taken a few courses of antibiotics, your good bacteria have been, at least the numbers have gone down. So having a short-term good probiotics is a good idea. And then there's a lot of stuff you can do from a dietary perspective too. Again, everything, I'll keep repeating this. Remember that the first step is always your diet, always your lifestyle, and then you move into the supplement. And then other group, I put it essential fatty acids, amino acids. Essential fatty acids, you often hear omega-3. You hear omega-3, 6, and 9. Omega-6, so these are really good fats, right? That our body cannot produce, so we need to get it from a diet. Then oftentimes, again, if you have a balanced diet with nuts, seeds, and fish, you will get your omega-3s. But if you're trying to treat a specific condition, then you may need a higher dose. So again, we don't want to get into too many details because then there's a lot of it. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was functional foods. So they're actually foods that can help you, with certain conditions. For example, cranberry juice, right? It's been shown to decrease the incidence of UTI. So if you get a lot of bladder infections, maybe that's a good idea to start. Things like beetroot juice has been shown to reduce blood pressure, right? So if you don't have a very high blood pressure, maybe you want to start with that, right? So because it contains a lot of nitric oxide. So those are some of the foods which can be treated as supplements. Okay. So I hope I didn't confuse it with different class, but just remember there's different types. And when you're trying to navigate it, just realize it's not all fall into the same category, right? And let's go to the questions. Maybe things will get clear up a little bit more. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I see now there's 8 comments in the chat. I don't know if the comments are.
Oh. Thank you. Let me check if they're trying to tell me anything. Yes, it's recording. And yes, oh, they were just telling me about recording.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, let me close this. Okay. So what I thought the best way would be to actually go through this from a question perspective, right? So because like I said, we can't really talk about all the supplements because everybody's different, but at least if you have some sort of guidelines. So when you're trying to decide, do I need a supplement? Should I take a supplement? You have these kind of questions you're kind of running in your head. Okay. The first one is, am I deficient in this? Like you said, with iron, you were deficient. And with iron, I get sometimes clients telling me, well, I'm getting tired, should I get iron? Because I've been deficient in the past. I always say with iron, get a blood test done because it's very easy to get the blood test done. And the other thing is, if you get too much iron into your body, the body has no way of eliminating it. And we've had cases when I used to work in the hospital, people come in with too much iron, and it becomes a bigger issue, right? So you don't want to be taking iron unless your iron is low. And sometimes that happens, if you are if you have had an operation or surgery, your iron will drop and you will start you on iron tablets. I mean, we used to do that all the time at the hospital, right? But then you want to make sure that you're not on this forever. So oftentimes when I sit down with clients to do a medication review, I'll ask them, well, why did you start on them and have you had a new level done? Because it's very easy to get the level done. So another thing would be B12, right? You're feeling tired, it's easy to get the B12 levels done, right? So again, the B12 range of normal is very wide. If you're at the low end, you want to take a bit more to get the higher end. So there are a few things that you can measure. Some things you can measure in the blood. However, the amount you get is what's actually floating in the blood. Most of it is actually stored in the cells, for example, magnesium. Right. So magnesium, when we do levels, and we do often in the hospital, not so much in the community, if the blood levels are low, then it's more of an emergency, but you may still not have optimum level because the body will maintain good levels, but it keeps leaching it from the cells. So cells don't have enough magnesium, but the blood is okay. So in that case, we kind of look at symptoms, right? And so the other thing you want to ask is, do I need a supplement or can I use a supplement to treat a symptom? And like I said, some people would come to me and they're like, well, I don't want to take medications. Is there something else I can do? Some things, medications aren't helping. For example, one of the common ones I see is when you get I just left my head, when the muscles tense up at night, it's cramping, but there's another word they use also for it. But cramping is good. Yeah, cramps. So that's very common. And the medications, we really don't have much medications for that, right? But if you're low in your minerals, it's possible that you may get cramping. So I always say, well, trial it, right? And we always talk about, well, that's another question you ask. Well, if you're using it for symptom, how long do I use it for? Because it's not, if you start something, and I see that with pain, right? People come in and they're on glucosamine and chondroitin, and I ask them, well, is it making you feel better? And they're like, no, the pain is still there. How long have you been on it? Oh, 3 years. And I'm like, okay, then, because then you're wasting your money at that point. Because if it hasn't, so I always say minimum 3 months. Because sometimes people will take it for a couple of weeks, and well, a couple of weeks isn't going to show you symptoms. So I know it's hard sometimes because it is a slow process. It's not going to work quickly as some of the medications might work. But again, you can be on medications and taking this and then wean off the medications, right? There's another product that I think I had written an email about because when that came into the research and there was actually good research on it, it's called PIA. I think some of you might have gotten my email. It was months ago. And that was really, again, the trial period was 3 months. So I would tell if you're taking pain medications, use that for 3 months as it builds in your system. Then you can see if you're feeling better, then you can wean off the medication. Do you see what I mean? So it takes time. And the other thing I always say also, I didn't put it down here, is that when you're using something to treat a symptom, use one thing at a time. Sometimes I have people taking a whole bunch of different things for the same symptom. Well, you don't really know if 3 months down the road, if you feel better, which one was it? And then you're stuck taking all three because you're too scared to stop them. Right? So one at a time, give it a 3-month trial. And then if it doesn't work, stop that, try something else. Okay. That's usually my kind of guideline. And when it comes to herbal medications, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's not going to interact. or, and again, depending on the dose, it could be harmful as well, So again, just don't start taking it without consulting. And again, if you're a client of mine, you can come and talk to me and we'll go through and figure out if it's okay in terms of your medication. Then you go into, is this for prevention of symptoms, right? And again, a lot of the supplement industry has exploded because of the fact that, people want to be well, right? So you want to be taking these things because you want to prevent illnesses, right? But in that case, the only issue becomes you taking long-term. And I really put a lot of emphasis on what is evidence, but here's the catch, because when it comes to evidence for supplements, you won't have it like you have it for drugs. And I kind of have to sift through the evidence as well. And I'll give you an example, which will make a lot more sense. So for example, my mom had a hip fracture first year of the pandemic, 2020, right? So she was in the hospital and I didn't want her to go to rehab because I knew at that time they wouldn't allow anybody in. And it would have been hard for her to be alone. And I knew this, I think the loneliness would kill her more than the hip fracture. And my mom's old, and I thought the chances of things going wrong after hip fracture are pretty high. In fact, my brother sent me this article, like, the death mortality is this, and I'm like, oh my gosh, So we had to do, and I felt like there was something I could do to prevent it getting worse, or at least speed up the healing, right? So then I looked at some studies, and vitamin C has been shown post-surgery to aid in healing, again, because it's an antioxidant, right? And then collagen has also been shown to help with bone building, right? So there was no study that showed me that, okay, if you take this, your rate of survival after hip fracture would be this high. So the studies that are out there are different than what you would find for drugs. And that's why it becomes difficult for a lot of healthcare professionals to kind of like say, well, there's no direct study. But here you kind of have to look at it, look at the evidence. And the last thing you also look at is the safety profile, right? Well, collagen you can get from food, it's pretty safe. And so is vitamin C. So I thought, well, they're both safe. Let me take a chance. And we started on it. So I did. And she did well, even though the surgeon was like, initially was like, oh, it's looking bad. It's the way it's healing. It's not correct. 8 months down the road, oh, it's looking better. So I don't know if it was that, or again, it's hard to measure endpoints. And that really becomes a struggle for a lot of doctors as well, because you're like, well, they're looking for endpoints. That's how they're trained, right? Well, if you're preventing something, are you really going to know endpoints? It's really hard. So it's one of those spaces where you kind of have to, do your research, and you kind of have to see, well, so don't fall into the trap of taking everything that's out there that's promoted for prevention. I would say, especially because there's a lot out there, right? Do some research. If you don't have questions, come ask me, I'll do the research for you. And then we can decide based on the evidence that, okay, well, it looks safe, this is what you can do, and go from there. So that's how I take it when it comes to prevention. And again, the other thing also is, can I get it in food source in enough amount, right? When it comes to prevention as opposed to treatment, you don't need as much of the dose, right? Because you're preventing a problem, you're not trying to treat it. When you're treating it, again, you need a higher dose. So sometimes you can get enough in a diet. Example, with turmeric, for example, I mean, for me as an Indian, I'm always cooking with turmeric. That's part of my diet, and I'm throwing turmeric all the time. But is this something you could add in your diet instead of taking supplements, right? Because you want to prevent it. And again, turmeric has a lot of studies on it in terms of an anti-inflammatory. Now, is that going to help you with your joint pain? Maybe not, because it's not in high enough dose. But in terms of prevention, likely, right? So that's the kind of questions you ask when you're talking about preventative. Hope that makes sense. Okay. So then I want to talk about, will the supplement get absorbed? Do I have absorption issues? So now that's something a lot of us don't think about, right? But in order for that, what you're taking and to go in, if it's a tablet or capsule or whatever, and that's why I like liquid a lot, if you can tolerate or if you don't mind the inconvenience of liquid, because it's already divided up. It's already in a liquid form, so it's a lot easier to absorb, because you don't have to break down, because there was one, I think a while ago, I had read somewhere that they, sometimes you can end up, if it doesn't break down enough, it ends up in your, in your stools. the absorption is minimized. And I say that about vitamin D. I don't know if you've ever spoken to me about vitamin D. I always tell you guys that with vitamin D, there's tablets, there's liquid capsules, there's oil, and then there's emulsion. The emulsion is at the top because it has the best absorption. Liquid caps, the oil is second, and then the liquid caps and the tablet is usually the last one. But they're the most convenient to take because, you can just put it into whatever you just said. But say, for example, if you're taking 1,000 IU in a tablet, maybe you will get 400 or 500 absorbed. But in emulsion, 1,000, you will probably get 1,000. So absorption matters. And if you have any gut issues, any sort of, if you get diarrhea often, or if you have IBS, your gut is already compromised. So you don't want to be taking things that are not going to get absorbed. So you want to look at, that should be a concern when you're buying a supplement. Is this supplement going to get absorbed given my digestive health? Okay, it's different for everybody. Somebody, like, for example, with my kids, I'm like, take the tablets. It doesn't really matter. Or take the, whatever is easiest. And again, sometimes compliance is important. If they're not going to take the liquid, I might as well get them at least 400 than not get any at all, right? So you kind of have to weigh that out. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so the last question is, am I taking medications that could be depleting nutrients in my body? Something even I forget sometimes when I'm talking to my clients. But there are medications that we take, and depending on the dose and depending on how long we're taking it from, it can deplete, and there's evidence of it as well, right? For example, birth control will deplete your B vitamins, right? If you're on it long term, maybe it's a good idea to actually supplement rather than wait for deficiency and then you supplement. Statins deplete coenzyme Q10. Now, coenzyme Q10 is normally made in the body and it's actually used for energy and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's part of every mitochondria, which is part of every cell. Now, not everybody on statin, I put them on coenzyme Q10, but if you're on high dose, like 80 milligrams, then it's probably a good idea to get coenzyme Q10, right? PPIs, which is the cholesterol, to decrease the cholesterol. Sorry, I should have, like atorvastatin, simvastatin, Lipitor, yes. But that doesn't mean everybody needs to be on. If you're on it, again, because a lot of people are on statins, but if you're on high dose for a long period of time, it might be a good idea to supplement with that, because cost comes in as well, right? That's another problem with supplements. They're costly and they're not covered, right? So I look at, what the situation is, what is the risk, right? Again, the body is normally making it as well, right? So, but if you're on a high dose statin, you will deplete yourself quite quickly, then it's a good idea to supplement. PPI, which stands for proton pump inhibitors, which are drugs used to reduce the acid production in the body. Oftentimes they're prescribed when you have acid reflux, or if you have an ulcer. They're supposed to be used short-term, but in some people it ends up being a long-term treatment. And in that case, they do deplete quite, and there's a lot of evidence coming up now that they actually have guidelines to try to get people off these PPI, especially if they're on it long-term. So that's what's called de-prescribing. So we try to get people off it if we can, but if they can't, then, we do want to look at their magnesium, also calcium as well, because what they found is that because the stomach needs to have an acidic environment in order for these minerals to get absorbed. So when the environment is compromised because the acid is being reduced, because too much acid is causing problems for you, so these drugs will reduce the acid, but at the same time, then you're not able to get some of these nutrients absorbed from there, right? So then you want to make sure that we do supplement, so then you are able to at least get some. And again, water pills you probably know about, and people on high dose water pills like furosemide, the doctors will prescribe them potassium, right? But otherwise, if you're not on a high dose, if you're taking a short term, then a banana, because a lot of these, like I said, you can, and every time when I speak to my clients, I would always tell them, here's a list of all the foods items. If you can get it through your diet, great, you don't have to supplement, right? But if you don't think you can do it, like even for example, with my mom's case, she could get collagen from bone broth, But I knew I didn't have the capacity to make bone broth for her, and I knew she wasn't gonna be able to, or even drink it every day. So then at that point, I knew I had to put her on a supplement, right? So the options of getting it from diet are there, and it's always a good idea to get it from your food. But sometimes when you're not able to, you know that, you should consider taking some of these supplements. Yeah.
What is PPI?
So PPI is this class of medications. So you have Losec, pantoprazole. What's the other one? Tecta, Harriet, yeah. If you take them long term, are you on any of those medications or?
No, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so it's called, there's specific class of medications that people are put on if they have acid reflux, or if they have a lot of heartburn, or if they had an ulcer of the stomach. So if you're not on it, you don't have to worry about it. But if people are on it, then you have to be a little bit concerned, especially if you're on it long term. Some people take it as needed, then that's not a problem, right? Some people take it for a short period of time, not a problem. But if you're on it for a long period of time, the first step to actually is to get you off it. But if you can't come off it, then make sure that your nutrients are, replenished. So does the manufacturer matter, right? And again, the quality of the supplement, it's kind of debatable. I wouldn't say you should just pick up anything off the shelf, right? But again, there's so many companies out there, and even for me to actually research each of them is exhausting. So I just talk to a few that I feel comfortable with, and those are the ones I bring in. But it doesn't mean they're all bad. And again, I always encourage my clients to actually call the company, have a conversation with them about, what kind of practice they use, where did they get their raw materials, but they all have a customer service hotline or a number that you can call. But when it comes to manufacturer, if you're looking for clean products, some are cleaner than others. Some will have a lot more additives and activity. For example, I'll give you for protein powders, right? There are some which have a whole bunch of stuff, and I always tell my son, please look at the ingredients, but he doesn't listen to me. And then there's some which are very clean, right? You don't have a lot of the extra stuff. The one he buys, it just tastes good, and I don't know what else he has, but he's doing way better than he was like 5-6 years ago. He's so much more disciplined with his diet. So I don't complain. He can buy whatever he wants. But when it comes to things like this, manufacturer will matter because some are cleaner than others. When it comes to things like probiotics, remember I mentioned probiotics is a topic by itself. But with probiotics, it's really important because these are good bacteria, and there is a gazillion of them. And then the dose matters, and the type of bacteria they put in, and the formulation, because you want to make sure these bacteria don't actually dissolve in the acid, because then they'll get killed. So the pill you're taking needs to be able to make it to the intestines, specifically the large intestines, because that's where they attach themselves and replicate, right? So I like specific ones for that reason, because if you're going to take probiotics, they need to be good ones. Otherwise, you've just wasted your money.
What about some had recommended me to take a probiotic by powder? Now, will that be absorbed, or will that make it to where it needs to be?
No, the way it's formulated, it does make it.
Okay,
So-
so I'm gonna pill, being able to travel. and
Yeah, no, it's the way the formulation is. Which specific one was there?
it was organic.
Organica, okay, I'm not sure about that.
Organic would be
They
cake.
do change, because the brand I like, and again, it's not the only one. There are other good ones out there. It's a Genestra. Because they are the HMF, so human microflora. So their bacteria are the ones which are found in the human body. So they tend to attach themselves better. Again, all of these will come out of your systems, right? So, but they last longer than some of the other ones. So that again, there are other good ones too. I always recommend, like I said, if they're specific, when you're taking, call the company, ask them, what is it? Because the formulation will be different. That will make sure that it does actually make it. They do make it that they don't get killed by the acid. So the probiotics, I always tell, don't buy Jameson probiotics. And I have nothing against Jameson. They do make good products, but they're not specializing in probiotics, right? With probiotics, you really, again, it's just because of the way the industry is. And there's so many different types, and you can't just pick up any probiotic, right? Because some contain bacteria that are good for the colon. Some are good for, some have been studied. And again, look at some of the specific studies for it. So probiotics is a topic by itself. But I just want to caution you that if you're going to put money in probiotics, just don't buy anything, right? Just do your research, speak to somebody, go ahead.
That would be taken long term or just?
I wouldn't, so if you were taking it, say, for example, after, you had a course of antibiotics, right? Then you take it short term, right? And again, when it comes to gut health, there's so much we can do in terms of our lifestyle. So I wouldn't, like, for example, you can take all the probiotics in the world, but if you don't manage your stress, because it's a gut-brain connection, those bacteria are gonna get killed all the time, doesn't matter. So you can just, you know what I mean? So there's a lot when it comes to gut health. So I always tell my clients, probiotics by itself won't fix your gut. There's a whole lot of stuff you can do from a lifestyle perspective. It doesn't even require. In fact, I am not on probiotics right now. I was actually taking them while, and I didn't even take it when I did my gut health. It was actually the third step of my healing when I took probiotics. And then I've kind of done that part and I'm feeling great and I'm not taking it. So I do it more for my diet, and I make sure that, because our bacteria that are in there, they will proliferate as long as we actively don't do anything to kill it. Do you know what I mean? Like stress will kill it, too much sugar will kill it, alcohol will kill it, all kinds of bad lifestyle choices will kill it, but they're so resilient that as long as we kind of support them, they will divide and they will thrive. So there's a lot you can do to replenish them, but short term, I would suggest if you're taking, something that would have killed it, short term, replenish them and then go ahead. Yeah.
So now we're talking about prebiotics.
Yes.
versus Probiotics. And I don't know if it's just something else that the world of marketing has decided that we needed it. Or is it really, what is the difference? And do we really need now probiotics, and why do suddenly we need it now? Or prebiotics?
So prebiotics, what means is foods for the bacteria. That's prebiotics. It's all what it is. So you don't actually have now some of the probiotics, like I know Genestra makes one. So it's really fiber. The gut bacteria like fiber. So I always say, eat oats. Oats is great for that. Apples are amazing for the flaxseed is great too. Anything which has soluble fiber is actually will be great for your gut. And those are prebiotics. There's one that when I was in nutrition, there was one vegetable that my teacher loved, and I sometimes buy it, and it's easy to use, but I don't know why I don't use it as much. It's called Jerusalem artichoke. Have you tried it? Jerusalem artichoke. Has anybody ever tried it? So you can actually find that at Copas. I used to buy it at the Waldorf market, and sometimes I'd buy it in the summer, but then winter. But that's actually it's loaded with inulin and fiber. So that if you give the prebiotics to your gut bacteria, like I said, they will be happy, they will eat, and they will proliferate, right? So you don't necessarily need to take in a supplement. Right? Always ask the question before your supplements, can I get it in my diet? And will I be able to sustain it in my diet? And if you can, by all means, that's the first step to go is through the diet. Hope that answers the question. Yeah.
That did. Thank you.
Taste and absorption. Again, absorption, liquid is always in taste. Like I mentioned, I like that magnesium because it tastes good. Some companies will just make better tasting products than others do, right? So if compliance is an issue, especially with fish oil too, those are difficult to tolerate. And if you take capsule, you have to take a lot of the capsules because to fit that oil into little capsules, you have to take a lot, and they're like horse pills. They're really big. So liquid is usually a good way to go, but then you want to get something that's going to taste better. So that's where the manufacturer matters. And oftentimes when I speak to the manufacturer, I will ask them for a sample so I can try it. So then I can recommend, and that's on magnesium. I love that even my daughter would have it because it tastes good.
Yeah.
Right. So it's easy to tolerate. So I think that is my last slide. Well, I don't think we have time for this, but if there's any questions, we can ask about that. But before, I just wanted to leave this with you guys. If you're not on my email list, because I feel like that's the only way I can, because even, sometimes when I decide on what the topic is going to be, by the time I actually put the posters up in the store, by the time you come and see it, you probably will miss it. So the best way to know what's happening, in terms of workshops, because we have, like I promised you this year, I'm hoping to do more. We're going to have workshops, health and wellness news. We actually have a stress management course starting next week. It's an online new products, store specials, anything. It's going to be through email. So if you're not on my email list, I don't write a lot of emails. I won't spam you. Give them maybe once every 2 weeks if I'm good, once a week, maybe. So, so just make sure you're on it. You'll be able to get
Did you put the previous one, which were?
Yeah. No, it's not taking me back. Hold on.
So they were saying.
This
these
one?
were Question, yeah, this one.
Yeah, so I just thought depending on the time, if I'd be able to talk about these, I would, but I think we're kind of running short of time. So if you have any specific questions on any of them, I could take them now. I don't, if somebody online, I don't know if anybody has questions online, you can just unmute. Hope I can hear. Not my earphones on. Okay, let's see. Let's see if I can. Pre-probiotics, yes, we talked about that. Can we get my contact information? So what food is high in magnesium? Usually nuts are. Almonds are actually quite high in magnesium. And I always say, you know, the best way to take almonds is to actually soak them overnight and have them the next morning. It really activates a lot of the enzymes, helps with the digestion. So almonds are usually high. Is the supplement recommended for borderline high cholesterol? Okay, so when it comes to high cholesterol, so there are some they call plant sterols. So these are, again, there's a question on Zoom. Someone is asking about, oh, you guys can read it. High cholesterol, borderline high cholesterol. So when it comes to high cholesterol, diet is very effective as well. In fact, if you look at the guidelines, the medical guidelines for reducing cholesterol, the first step is always 6 months of dietary changes. But, you know, people kind of, medical profession kind of forget sometimes, so they don't talk about that. But dietary, increasing your fiber intake, you know, increasing your antioxidants, which comes from your fruits and vegetables, especially the colorful ones, right? Reducing your stress will reduce your cholesterol levels. Getting enough sleep, because cholesterol and all these hormones are regulated at night. And when you don't get enough sleep, your cholesterol level, and I've seen that so often in practice that when people are not getting enough sleep, cholesterol levels go up. So there are lots of things from a lifestyle perspective you can do, but at the same time, if you do want to try a supplement, there is a product. It contains plant sterols. I think Genestra makes one called Sterol, but other companies will make it too. What you're looking for is plant sterols, because plant sterols have actually been studied and they've shown to the reason why, because of the fiber in the plants and also the antioxidants, they have been shown to reduce cholesterol levels. So if you're looking for a supplement, that's an option. Sterols, S-T-E-R-O-L-S, plant sterols.
Did you say supplements are not regulated by health and?
Yes,
They're all.
since 2004.
Okay.
So they regulate in the sense that it's not like anybody can make something and put it on. They have to submit an application. They have to tell them, okay, we're following good manufacturing practices. This is where we're getting the raw materials from. And Health Canada reviews it and then gives them a site license. Now, what I don't know is how often, and I guess I'd have to call Health Canada to find out how often do they actually go and do a, you know, inspection of the site. But they do license it, so not anybody can, you can't get a product from overseas and sell it. It is, and you're looking for that number. And if you want to be really sure, you can go into the database and say, oh yeah, this is an IPN number, been licensed by Health Canada, at least it's safe. Whole bunch of questions, I don't know who was first, go ahead.
I take multivitamin, the vitamin D3, 2.5 ounces, calcium, magnesium, acidophilus, and omega-3, and I take them all at once after breakfast. Is that okay? Or should it be split
You
up?
know, from an absorption perspective, I always like to split them, because if you have too much, depending on your digestive system, you can't always digest it, break it into the piece it needs to, and then get absorbed. Because the whole thing isn't, doesn't get absorbed through your lining, right? It has to be digested and absorbed. Even, for example, calcium, I always tell people, break it up, don't take it. So from an absorption perspective, I would separate them. Even morning and night, rather than 3 times, because then it's hard to remember. Right, so it's from an absorption, I think it's the body absorbs better if it doesn't get bombarded with too much all at once.
Some supplements better to take it.
Like vitamin B's, for example, they give you energies. I wouldn't do it at night. I would do it in the morning, right? Other than that, magnesium helps with, because cramping, people get night cramps, also sleeping. Magnesium is a more relaxing mineral, so I would say take it at night. Right? Iron, for example, I would take it with food or with something like orange juice because absorption is better when you have some, again, some of the iron come with the vitamin C, right? So there are some, but I don't know off the top of my head which one specifically, but yes, there are some which are better at night than day.
The liquid magnesium, I take a tablespoon in the morning and a tablespoon at night, right? Liquid, I'll take it in the middle. I just thought-
Are you taking the calcium magnesium or are you taking the plain magnesium? Glycinate, the
Yeah.
plain magnesium, right? I don't remember the doses on there. Is it two hundred? Bill was 200. I have a feeling that magnesium liquid has 400 milligrams per tablespoon. You may only need one.
Okay.
You may only need 1 tablespoon at night. Yeah, I'll double check.
At night?
Yeah, take it at night
Okay.
because it helps with it. It's a relaxing, I mean, unless you are, I mean, it just helps you with sleep, but it's just a relaxing mineral. I always say take it at night. You have a question, sir? Go ahead. And then, yeah,
Okay. What dosage is magnesium for anyone?
I would at least 400. And with magnesium, again, remember we talked about absorption, so there's different salts of magnesium.
Yeah.
Sometimes you find cheap magnesium, which is magnesium oxide. Well, that's not gonna get absorbed because that's more to give you diarrhea. If you're constipated, take magnesium oxide, right? Glycinate is one of the better absorbed, and then there's citrate is not bad either, but glycinate is one of the better absorbed. Right, so it's glycinate, yeah, and that's the one, yeah,
Oh,
the other question, sorry, did you have a
question there too?
Um. Okay, let's see, what? A recommendation for calcium supplements to replace any reduction from taking prednisone. Yeah, so. When it comes to calcium. Again, there's some which are harder on the stomach. Citrate is usually harder. I don't know off the top of the head which specific ones, but in terms of supplements with calcium, you don't want to take more than 1,000 in supplement form, because there were some studies showing that if you take too much in supplement form, it actually can calcify your vessels. So try to get it more from the diet, but at 1,000 from your supplements, the rest from your diet. That's basically what I go with in terms of calcium. But I can't, I'm trying to see, I can't remember. Maybe you can email me. If you email me, I'll post the other one, but if you email me, then I can research the specific ones, which is easier to tolerate. Are there supplements we should take more in winter to boost immunity? Vitamin D, make sure everybody is taking vitamin D. That's my, yeah. How much? 2,000. You know, that was, I have a little bit of time. I'll tell you the story in terms of my own health. You know, when I learned it was vitamin D was more about, you know, using it for, bone building, right? So you always take calcium and vitamin D together because calcium doesn't get absorbed if there's not enough vitamin D, and vitamin D is made by our skin when we expose to sunlight, right? But I wasn't, like I said, before I got sick, I wasn't, even though I'd learned all this, but I wasn't taking any supplements. And then a month before the summer before, actually, no, that summer before I got diagnosed with the autoimmune condition, I just had this intuition, asked my doctor to do my vitamin D levels. And I didn't, and you have to pay for it. She goes, why do you want to know? I'm like, I just want to know, you know, just do the vitamin D levels for me. And so she did the vitamin D levels and I was at 17. The normal begins at 70. I was so low. And then of course I got the diagnosis. So for those of you who don't know, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, right? So I got the diagnosis and then started doing research and I realized, oh my God, there's so much more to vitamin D and there's so much evidence and it's actually an immune modulator, and the risk of getting autoimmune if your vitamin D is low are pretty high. And I'm like, oh my God, you know, but anyways, in hindsight, everything's 2020, but whatever it was, right? So then I started taking vitamin D and I always make sure, because the other problem is us living in the Northern Hemisphere, we just don't make enough, right? And with my darker skin complexion, I don't make enough. If you're older, you don't make enough, right? So we just, and people even who live in Australia and countries, you know, where there's a lot of sun, they're using a lot of sunblock because of the ozone layer. And so they're not making enough. So vitamin D is one supplement. I always tell my clients, please take vitamin D. You don't have to take anything else, but take vitamin D. So vitamin D is really good if you're going to take anything for the winter. If you're surrounded by people who are getting sick, Then I tried getting, add up my vitamin C a little bit more, because that's again an antioxidant and that will sort of help me. Sometimes I take oil of oregano, but it's terrible tasting. So there are a few things you could do, but only short term. And then. Oh, food sensitivity testing, that's a big question. I don't know if I want to take that on right now. Yeah, evening primrose has been studied more for menopause symptoms, right? A lot of, so the studies that talk about that, again, I don't know, I'm not on top of it in terms of the research out there. Again, email me and I can get you a bit more research on that. There were a few more questions I want to take before we go off.
I wanted to ask, what is your, what profession are you, like, are you pharmacist, biochemist?
Okay, I should have introduced myself. I just assumed everybody knew me. So I'm actually a pharmacist.
Yeah.
So I trained, I graduated from U of T in 1998, School of Pharmacy there. And so I've been working as a pharmacist. I did a certification in holistic nutrition. So it's more of a nutrition certification, but more of a I guess it's more lifestyle and everything as well. It's different than dietitian, right? So that's what I did. And then when I got sick, I kind of learned a lot of other stuff, just not for my own healing, but when I got better, I realized, oh my God, there's so much to it. And then we can exit out? Okay, and everything else is locked. We just go through here. Got it. Okay, as long as you're not locked in. Okay, all right, we're finishing off anyways. But yeah, so that's really, and so I've done wellness coaching, so I do more of holistic. I like to call myself a holistic pharmacist because I look at things in a more comprehensive rather than just a drug treatment. I think you had a question about.
It was answered when you talked about vitamin D, thank you.
Okay, all right.
How much are you asking me?
Yeah. That's okay.
How much should we go for tour? You said you needed it with your food, like,
Yeah, so usually with food, it's really a pinch. I don't know if you can go through there. Are you? Bathroom? I don't think they can go from there.
No.
Oh, bathroom. Okay, so everybody knows, right? Just make sure. Alarm will go off, I think.
You're right, that'll be.
Yeah, so the turmeric, if you're using in a food basis, and a lot of this Ayurvedic, like Indian medicine, they use turmeric as well. It's quarter teaspoon, really, that's all it works. Yeah, it's not, you don't need a lot, it's very important. I would buy a good quality turmeric, right? But you can use a quarter teaspoon is all you need, and from a dietary perspective, now if you're buying. So the tablets, I have to look into that, I'm not sure, and it depends what you're using it for, is it prevention, or you're trying to, do you have some inflammation that you want to tackle? Yeah, so you know what, we are planning to do a talk on inflammation, there'll be a few talks on inflammation, that was really the plan to start out, but because of this course that I'm doing next week, I didn't think I would have the capacity to do it, but we will talk about arthritis from a very holistic perspective in terms of diet, lifestyle.
Turmeric, you didn't mention what you use for.
Yeah, it can be used. Oh, it's used for so many things. There's so much research on turmeric. It's mind-boggling. There's a lot of research. So if you want to buy in a powder form to use, so there are some like Simply Organic makes it in a bottle form.
Okay.
We used to carry, we don't carry anymore. Copas might have it.
Yeah, okay, so you put it in your food, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and there's one thing that we have that might be of interest. It's made into like a powder form, but you can make a like a latte or lemonade out of it. You can make a drink out of it.
I buy it. It's wonderful.
Yeah, which one do you buy? The
I
lemon?
bought the Coke, I bought the turmeric one, the Coke one and the regular turmeric. The turmeric
Yeah,
one-
what's the name of the company? Botanic? What is, do you remember?
No,
Where do you buy it?
We have some.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and actually two of them are, because they're expiring soon, I put them on a discounted rate. So you can try it. No, this is expiring soon.
Okay.
So I mean, again, when things expire, they're not gonna, on that day, they don't go bad. They can just be. So I think there are, I did put them on sale if they're still there. Do you remember the name Botanic?
I picked them up and I'm like, I'm a lemonade person, I put them back. But I just bought at Christmas. Yeah, it's in a glass jar.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of it.
See the label,
A yellow label.
yellow label, and I brought, in the past, I bought the lavender milk that I'm having
Yes.
my tea.
Yes,
This is calming, and the turmeric. I love the turmeric to put in my coffee, and I just bought the cocoa turmeric.
oh, you did, okay,
Yes.
so that's more chocolatey.
It's a
That's
little,
actually
but it's not, it doesn't turn to chocolate, it just gives you a bit of a
different taste.
different taste in your coffee.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna have to use any kind of creamer or milk. So it adds a bit of a, it's just that, it's not a creamer. But it just gives it a flavor without being syrupy. Where did you buy it?
So on the value small at the bottom there, but all my turmeric are at the bottom.
Okay, well,
I should move it up because you can see it, but all the different supplements and whatever I carry. Yeah. Or you had, I think, do one more question and then we'll, and for the night, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, there's someone behind, just give me 1 second, yeah. Yeah, so multivitamin gives you a little bit of everything. I like targeted supplements, so if you're short of something, you take more of that. People like to take multivitamins. Again, I wouldn't take multivitamin instead of if you have a terrible diet, you know, like people sometimes come if their kids are not eating well, want the vitamin, probably not, right? But if you are normally a good eater and you just want to make sure that just in case, like it's an insurance, yes, you can take a multivitamin. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't know if it would actually, because there's a little bit of everything in it. It doesn't give you a high enough dose. Like, you know, B12, there's so much little of it. If you low in vitamin B12, that's not gonna do the job, right? So it's not bad, but I usually like to do targeted supplementation, what you need, specific for your needs, and then from that.
It's the vitamin D that I'm taking, it's just 1 drop, right? That's all.
Which one are you taking? Much, yes. 1 drop gives you 1,000, you take 2 drops in the winter. Take 2 drops.
Take 2 drops.
Yeah, yeah. Take 2,000 in the summer, you can go down to 1,000.
Yeah.
So
what do you do with that?
I think if anybody here has online had any questions that I didn't get to, just message them to me. And I will answer them through email. Let me just, okay, so here it is. There's the email info@thepure.ca or aziza@thepure.ca. If you have any specific questions for me, it takes me a few days, so don't get disappointed if we don't answer right away, but I will get back to you. And I think that's it. I don't know how I'm going to stop.